The day I said no to my family and chose to be happy. I never imagined I would one day feel so betrayed by my own parents. My name is Anna, I'm 32 years old, and I grew up believing that family love meant unconditional support. But the reality was very different. Since I was little, my younger sister Bella always got everything she wanted, while I had to fight for any recognition. That already hurt me, but I always tried to let it go. Until the day my parents, Pedro and Rose, asked me to keep my wedding private, so as not to hurt Bella. I remember reading the email, feeling my stomach churn and a mixture of anger, fear, and disbelief taking over. It wasn't just a request, it was a veiled order, a clear attempt at manipulation. I felt that everything I planned for my happiness needed the approval of the person who always put my sister first. In that moment, I realized I couldn't give in. It wasn't just about me, but about Jose, my fiancé, who deserved to celebrate our union with joy, without worrying about family whims. I spent hours reflecting, feeling every emotion course through me: despair, frustration, pain, but also an unprecedented clarity. I needed to decide who I was, whether I would remain hostage to the will of others or embrace my right to be happy. So I decided I would do things differently. We would plan the biggest wedding party imaginable, but without my parents and without Belle. Every detail would be our choice, our celebration, and the decision brought a mixture of relief and tension, because cutting ties with family hurts, even when necessary. I felt fear of making a mistake, shame at rebelling, but also a growing strength. For the first time, I was putting my happiness first and recognizing my own worth. As I planned the party, I realized that every choice, every phone call, every decision was a way of asserting myself. Jose was by my side, supporting me, reminding me that what truly mattered was our union, not my family's approval. At the yahrzeit, same time, I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. Thinking about my parents and Bella's reaction made me tense, but also determined. Every vendor chosen, every invitation sent, every detail of the decorations was a step toward proving to myself that I had the power to decide and that no one had the right to control my life. It was emotionally exhausting, but also deeply liberating. For the first time, I felt that my happiness was my responsibility and no one else's. Even with sleepless nights, worries, and fear, there was clarity. I was doing something for my own good, for my marriage, and not for the approval of those who had always left me aside. I knew their absence would be painful, but necessary. When the party finally arrived, my mixed feelings intensified. I was tired, but thrilled, with a silent sense of triumph coursing through me. Every smile, every hug from the guests was a confirmation that my decision had been the right one. The absence of my parents and Bella didn't dim our joy. On the contrary, it made the celebration even more meaningful. I felt proud of myself, of our union, and of the courage I had had in deciding for us. The party was flawless, a victory over years of emotional manipulation, a reminder that true happiness comes from conscious choices and the courage to face them. I realized that even with the pain of cutting family ties, there was freedom and power in living according to my principles. After the party, I still felt a mixture of relief and bitterness. Knowing my parents would remain by Bella's side was painful, but at the same time, I felt a growing strength within me. I was finally creating something solid and happy, based on love and respect, not family whims. Looking at Jose and seeing his smile reminded me that together we were capable of overcoming any manipulation and building our own happiness. The clarity about my worth and the resilience I developed that day gave me an unprecedented sense of emotional autonomy. That day marked my turning point. Every tear, every fear faced, every decision made in defense of my happiness turned into strength. I understood that we don't need the approval of those who diminish us to be happy. I learned that cutting toxic ties is painful, but essential for growth and achieving emotional peace. It was on that day that I realized that, despite disappointment and pain, resilience allows us to overcome, maintain our dignity, and find joy even in the face of family betrayal. In the days following the party, I realized that the feeling of freedom was as intense as it was frightening. I still felt the pain of my parents' absence, the weight of the favoritism that had always existed between Bella and me, but there was also a lightness I had never experienced. For the first time, I realized that happiness doesn't depend on anyone's approval, and that was transformative. I spent hours reflecting on how I had allowed my family's opinion to control my life for so long. Jose remained my safe haven, always reminding me that we were building our own story and that what truly mattered was our union. I still felt anger, of course, but it had become fuel, not a burden. Clarity about my feelings and the decision to follow my own path gave me the strength to face the following days. I remember looking at the details of the party, still wrapped in memories and photos, and feeling a quiet pride. We had managed to create something real, a space of joy, love, and authenticity, even without the presence of those I had hoped for. It was a period of internal reorganization, learning, and valuing what truly matters in life. Every moment of joy I experienced there became a reminder that we are capable of overcoming manipulation, standing firm in the face of emotional injustice, and creating meaningful experiences, even if it means pushing away people who don't recognize our worth. I received my first contact from my parents about a year later, a cold, unapologetic email suggesting we should reconnect, but making it clear they were still on Bella's side. I felt a mixture of disbelief and anger. For a few seconds, my instinct was to respond angrily, confronting every word, every omission. But I took a deep breath and realized I didn't need to prove anything. I had my life, my marriage, and my happiness, and that was enough. I maintained my composure and responded accordingly, reaffirming my boundaries and choosing to remain distant. It was an act of self-affirmation, a demonstration that I would not give in to manipulation, and that my emotional peace was worth more than any superficial reconciliation. I remember feeling a strange relief after sending the reply, as if I had finally put an end to what had consumed me for years. My parents' contact showed me that some people don't change, and that expecting recognition or emotional justice from someone who has always favored others can be futile. At the same time, it strengthened my understanding of the importance of building a true support network of people who respect and love us without reservation. Jose and I began to value our union and our space even more, because we learned that happiness isn't about pleasing others, but about choosing who we want to be around and how we want to live. This experience taught me to recognize signs of manipulation and to protect myself emotionally without guilt. There were also moments of insecurity. At times, I found myself questioning whether my departure was too radical or whether I should have sought further dialogue. But each reflection ended with the same conclusion. My choices allowed me to grow, gain autonomy, and resilience. I learned to distinguish between genuine love and emotional manipulation, and to set clear boundaries, even if painful. This clarity was liberating and gave me the strength to deal with the emotional scars left by years of family favoritism. Looking back today, I see that period of separation and firm decision shaped who I am. I realize that we can't control others, but we can choose our own attitudes, our own well-being, and our own priorities. Overcoming this situation didn't come without pain, nights of tears, or moments of doubt, but it did come with strength, clarity, and renewed self-esteem. Every step I took during that period was an exercise in courage, and I learned that it's possible to maintain dignity and joy, even in the face of profound disappointments. Years passed, and I continued to consciously build my life, with Jose by my side, and every decision we made was guided by respect, love, and clarity about what we wanted. My parents' absence still weighed heavily at times, especially on important dates, but I learned to deal with it. Instead of missing what wasn't healthy, I began to appreciate those who were truly present and committed to me. Life began to teach me that happiness is about consistency, about taking care of yourself and the people who truly matter. I became firmer, more decisive, and realized that every difficulty I faced during that period of separation made me more resilient. I still felt hurt when I remembered the attempts at manipulation, but this pain no longer paralyzed me. Instead, it served as a warning to maintain my boundaries, to not be fooled by empty promises or reconciliations without real basis. Jose and I began to support each other even more, knowing that we were partners in every sense, and that our happiness didn't depend on anyone unwilling to respect our feelings. Every conversation with him, every hug in moments of insecurity, strengthened my sense that I was on the right path. I learned not to confuse physical absence with emotional abandonment, and to understand that some family relationships can be toxic, even when there's love involved. This clarity was liberating and allowed me to make room for healthier experiences, without guilt or fear. I also learned to forgive without necessarily reconnecting, an essential skill for preserving my peace. A few years later, I received unexpected news from Uncle Jorge, my mother's brother. He told me that Bella had decided to leave to work for a humanitarian organization, leaving the family environment that had always selfishly favored her. At the same time, I discovered that my parents were alone, going through moments of reflection and regret. I felt a mixture of surprise and quiet satisfaction, because life naturally showed me that selfish choices have consequences, and that my decision to maintain boundaries had been correct. There was no revenge, just the realization that I had built my life solidly and with integrity, without needing to manipulate or hurt anyone to be happy. I felt proud of myself and Jose for having faced family tension together and for having kept our union intact, based on love, respect, and emotional clarity. What had once been pain now became a learning experience. This phase also brought me important reflections on self-esteem and self-love. I understood that some wounds never fully heal, but we can learn to live with them without allowing them to define us. I learned to put my happiness first, and to realize that not all family members are prepared to offer balanced love. This awareness gave me the strength to face future situations with emotional maturity and confidence. I began to value my achievements, my freedom of choice, and my ability to resist manipulation more. Furthermore, I realized that keeping distance from people who harm us emotionally isn't a sign of weakness, but of courage. I learned to identify behavioral patterns, protect my energy, and not allow old resentments to prevent me from living fully. Each step I took in this process of distancing myself was, in fact, an act of self-love. Today, reflecting on everything I experienced, I see that defining moment of marriage wasn't just about a party or confronting my parents. It was the turning point that showed me I'm capable of resisting manipulation, maintaining boundaries, and building happiness even amid disappointment. This realization gave me a profound sense of autonomy and resilience that I carry with me to this day. In the years that followed, I realized that life has subtle ways of teaching lessons that, at the time, seemed too harsh to bear. I still thought about my parents and Bella, especially during parties or family celebrations, but I learned to deal with them differently. The anger and hurt were there, but they no longer dominated my life. I had built a routine based on conscious choices, surrounded by people who truly supported me, and that made all the difference. Every professional achievement, every planned trip, every small gesture of affection from Jose reminded me that, despite the absence or distance from my family, I could live fully. I also realized that my emotional life was more balanced. I no longer depended on the approval of anyone who always prioritized Bella over me. This understanding gave me the strength to make even more assertive decisions, without fear of hurting egos, because I understood that my well-being needed to come first. I felt lighter, despite carrying old scars, and I realized I had developed an essential skill, recognizing when certain people aren't ready to offer love in a healthy way. This clarity gave me the confidence to build stronger, more genuine relationships based on reciprocity and respect, without the constant shadow of favoritism or emotional manipulation. The sporadic contact with Uncle Jorge, who always remained neutral in the conflict, helped me understand more about the family, without getting involved in unnecessary drama. He told me details about Bella and my parents directly, almost as if giving me tools to assess situations without leaving me emotionally vulnerable. When I learned that Bella had decided to work for a humanitarian organization, I felt a mixture of relief and quiet satisfaction. She was finally moving away from the environment that had always selfishly favored her, and my parents were left alone, faced with choices and regrets I didn't have to carry. I felt grateful for having maintained my boundaries, for having chosen to preserve my emotional peace, and for not having engaged in forced reconciliations. This phase made me reflect deeply on forgiveness and how to navigate complex family relationships. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean reconnecting or forgetting the past, but finding a way to not let old wounds define our present and future. My life began to revolve around meaningful experiences, my relationship with Jose, friends, and chosen family, rather than the approval of those who couldn't see my worth. I also realized that the initial pain of my parents' absence was necessary to develop resilience. Every feeling of rejection or injustice was transformed into learning, emotional maturity, and a way to protect my happiness. Today, I know that my strength came precisely from the moment I decided not to bow to the whims of others, and not to allow my life to be controlled by those who didn't value my choices. This realization changed the way I viewed the world and interpersonal relationships. I learned to trust myself, to value those who truly matter, and to not allow toxic patterns to repeat themselves. With each step along this path, I felt an inner strengthening, a silent confidence that my life was finally under my control, and that my emotional well-being was a top priority. As the years passed, I learned to celebrate my life without needing validation from those who always prioritized my sister. Every achievement, every trip, every simple moment of happiness with Jose became a reminder that my choices were right. My parents' absence, which had previously seemed painful and unfair, became a space for growth, for cultivating true relationships, and for valuing my emotional autonomy. I felt a quiet strength within me, a security I had never felt before, because I finally understood that my happiness depended on myself, not on those unwilling to recognize my worth. I still remembered the nights I cried alone, the accumulated disappointments, and the weight of years of comparison and favoritism, but these memories were no longer chains that bound me. They were scars that reminded me of my resilience and my ability to overcome adversity. Uncle Jorge's final contact, informing me about Bella and my parents, brought unexpected but necessary closure. Knowing that Bella had left to do humanitarian work brought me a quiet relief, and the realization that my parents were alone made me reflect on the consequences of choices based on favoritism. I felt neither pleasure nor revenge, only the certainty that my decision to keep my distance and preserve my emotional peace had been the right one. For the first time, I felt I could look back without bitterness, but with clarity about my strength and the value of the choices I made to protect my well-being. Today, at 32, I can share this experience without tears of despair, but with sincere emotion. I understood that it's possible to overcome hurt and disappointment without losing my dignity, and that establishing clear boundaries is essential for my own emotional health. I learned that we don't need everyone's approval to be happy, and that some people simply aren't ready to value us. My life with Jose became a safe space filled with true love, and this was the greatest victory I achieved after years of manipulation and family resentment. The turning point, that decisive moment of marriage, was proof that I am capable of facing emotional challenges without losing myself. Every tear, every anxiety, and every decision I made during that period served to strengthen my character and self-esteem. Today, I realize that true overcoming isn't forgetting the past, but learning to live with it so it doesn't define who we are. This experience taught me resilience, emotional clarity, and above all, the value of choosing one's own happiness. I still feel some of the pain, of course, because broken family ties never completely disappear, but I learned to transform that pain into strength and learning. Each step I took was an affirmation that I can be happy, that I can love, and that I can build my life without relying on the validation of those who could never fully see me. This is my story of overcoming. Painful, intense, but absolutely mine.